Welcome back to Mr. Charles Stories. Have you ever loved someone so deeply, only to realize they were more interested in monitoring you than understanding you? What if your husband, America's favorite billionaire, was quietly tracking every move you made? While wrapping it in the word protection, this story isn't just about betrayal. It's about control disguised as care. It's about silence becoming a prison. It's about what happens when a woman chooses herself, and what she learns in the aftermath. So, tap subscribe, hit like, because Raina's story will challenge everything you thought about love, power, and freedom. To everyone outside the gates, Raina Carrington had the kind of life people envied in silence. A sculpted Beverly Hills mansion behind security glass, an ocean blue Bentley with custom plates, and a last name that came with platinum status on every list in Los Angeles. She was Mrs. Dorian Carrington, wife to a billionaire real estate mogul, the kind of man who closed 9-figure deals before breakfast and made magazine covers before noon. Her friends called her lucky, but luck didn't hold her at night, and it sure didn't speak her name with warmth anymore. Inside that castle, past the cameras, staff, and imported Italian marble, was a woman living beside a stranger. Dorian didn't yell. He didn't cheat publicly. He didn't storm out, throw tantrums, or forget anniversaries. He just faded. Their dinners became quiet rituals. Their car rides, filled with phone calls. His eyes were always on screens. His replies were clipped. One-word answers. Timed nods. Cold kisses that felt more like habits than affection. At first, Raina blamed herself. Maybe she was too emotional, too needy. She had walked away from her non-profit job to support his growing empire. Moved into his world, adapted to his schedule, his life, his brand. She thought they were building something together. Now she wasn't sure if she was a partner or a perfectly dressed ghost in the background of his life. Still, she smiled at events. Still, she posed for press photos with her hand tucked neatly into the crook of his elbow. Because what else could she do? She was Mrs. Carrington. The public expected elegance, and Dorian expected perfection. But behind the flawless makeup and soft curls was a woman starving for connection. She remembered the man he used to be. Their first date was tacos by the beach, barefoot in the sand. He held her heels in one hand and an horchata in the other, listening. As she talked about wanting to help foster kids find stable homes, he admired her heart back then, told her she was the kind of woman who made the world better. Now, he barely noticed when she walked into a room. It started with the calendar. She had just returned from a friend's baby shower, thrown by one of her old college roommates. She hadn't mentioned it to Dorian, mainly because he rarely asked anymore. When she came through the front door, he was seated in the sunken living room, sipping a neat bourbon with a blanket draped across the back of the sofa. "You left early," he said, without looking up. She froze. "What?" "The shower. It said 4 to 7 p.m. You were back by 6. She stood there, one hand still on her purse strap. "How did you—" "Your iPad syncs to mine." Her mouth opened, then closed again. He scrolled to the next tab on his tablet and didn't explain further. No apology, no sense of awkwardness, just casual surveillance. She let it go, but she didn't forget. A week later, she went to her favorite yoga studio, one she hadn't visited in months. When she came home, Dorian was sitting at the dining table, poring over an architectural rendering. He didn't greet her, didn't say hello, just asked, "How was yoga?" Her chest tightened. "What?" He looked up. "You went to West Side Core Studio, right?" She nodded slowly. "How do you know that?" "I know your routines," he said flatly, and returned to his screen. Something inside her shifted that day. Not panic, not fear, something colder, a quiet knowing. Something was off. Not in the way women are sometimes told they're overthinking, but in the way only a woman who's been studied can sense when she's being watched. She started noticing patterns. The way his phone buzzed whenever she left the house. How her roots were casually brought up in conversation. He'd say things like, Took you longer than usual to get to Mila's. Didn't know the flower market was open that early. How was the detour on Sunset? Traffic was crazy today. Once might be a coincidence. That night, she lay awake long after Dorian had drifted to sleep. He looked peaceful in the dark, like a man with nothing to hide. She stared at the ceiling, her mind racing. Was she being paranoid? Or was he treating her like one of his assets, something to be tracked, monitored, controlled? She turned on her side and whispered into the shadows. "Do you still love me, Dorian? Or do you just need to know where I am?" He didn't answer. Of course he didn't. He was asleep, and she was already starting to wake up. The next morning, Raina moved through the house like she was walking through a showroom. Everything was clean, curated, cold. She passed the kitchen where the chef was preparing Dorian's post-workout meal and offered a soft smile she didn't mean. She poured her own coffee. Dorian had already left. As usual, no goodbye. The Bentley had a new scent in it that morning, sharp, unfamiliar. Not floral, not freshener. Clean in a chemical way. She barely registered it until she parked outside the organic grocery store and caught a subtle blink on her phone screen. Device connected. K003 surveillance. Her hands froze on the steering wheel. What device? She tapped the Bluetooth icon. A signal showed up, strong, local, unnamed. She opened the connection. A blinking green dot showed her current location. She opened the app details. It wasn't music, not air pressure, not tire sensors. Surveillance. She stared at the screen. Her breath caught in her throat. She turned off the engine. Crawled out of the car like her limbs didn't belong to her. Her heart pounded as she crouched near the rear tire. That's when she saw it. Under the bumper, slightly tucked behind the plate frame, was a small rectangular black object. It didn't belong. It wasn't factory installed. She reached out, fingers trembling, and pulled it loose. It detached too easily. The moment it left the car, her phone rang. She stared at the screen. Dorian Carrington. Her husband's name glowed bold and centered. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. She knew. She drove. Not home. Not to the studio. Not to any place Dorian would expect. She drove to Mila. Mila Cruz had been her college roommate, a woman who once turned down an offer from a top Manhattan law firm to open her own criminal defense practice in LA. Sharp as glass, loyal as blood. Raina didn't call ahead. She just showed up, pale and silent, holding the tracker in a Ziploc bag. Mila looked up from her laptop, blinked twice, and stood immediately. "Who hurt you?" "I need you to tell me if I'm going crazy," Raina said quietly. "Because if I'm not, I'm being watched." They sat at Mila's counter, wine untouched between them. Raina slid the bag across the marble. Mila examined the device with gloves, plugged it into a reader. Within seconds, a data log opened. Location pings, timestamps, movement summaries, coordinates. Every place Raina had been in the last 2 weeks. Mila's jaw tensed. "This is advanced." Raina barely breathed. "Can you tell who it's registered to?" "No. It's commercial grade, registered to a shell distributor, but it connected to your phone's Bluetooth when you removed it." Raina nodded. "And Dorian called me the second I did." Mila sat back. "Then that's your answer." Raina's voice cracked. "He put a tracker on my car." "Yes, and watched me like I was a liability." Raina's throat tightened. Why would he do this? Mila stared at her. "Why do rich men do anything, Raina? Control, power, insecurity. Maybe all three. I've never cheated. I've never lied. You've never left. And maybe that's what scares him." Raina drove home hours later, stomach in knots. She had made copies of the tracker's data and stashed them in Mila's safe. She parked in the driveway like nothing had happened. The house lights were warm. Too warm. Fake. Inside, Dorian stood in the kitchen, dressed down in a navy crewneck and slacks, holding a glass of Merlot. "You're home late," he said casually. She smiled, lips trembling. "Traffic." He nodded once and offered the wine. "Try this vintage." It's from a new partner's vineyard. She accepted the glass, sipped, and kept her hands steady. Nice, she said. Light. They sat in the living room. News flickered on the TV. He asked her how her day went. She lied and said fine. He told her about a new project in Dubai. She nodded and listened. He leaned over to kiss her forehead, and she didn't flinch. But inside, she screamed. That night, she lay awake again. Only this time, she didn't feel alone. She felt watched. She turned her face into the pillow, eyes wide open. This wasn't love. This wasn't protection. This was surveillance. And she was done mistaking the two. She wouldn't confront him. Not yet. Mila told her, if you want the truth, don't explode. Watch him. Let him believe he's still in control. That's when they slip. So Raina smiled more. She kissed him back. She played the perfect wife with a quiet plan unfolding inside her chest. She downloaded a secure messaging app, bought a burner phone, started logging his behavior. She pretended to be present while planning her exit. One night, after Dorian's charity gala, they rode home in silence. His hand rested on her thigh like a prop. She kept her gaze on the window. He broke the silence. You looked beautiful tonight. Thank you, she replied. People kept asking about you. You left early. I had a headache. He nodded. You always were sensitive to noise. Raina turned her head, studied his profile. Dorian Carrington, billionaire, influencer, husband, stranger. She whispered, what else do you know about me? He blinked. What? She smiled. You said I'm sensitive to noise. What else do you know about me? He paused, caught off guard. You don't like red wine on an empty stomach. You sleep curled to the left. You hum when you're anxious. She kept smiling. And yet, you had to put a tracker on my car. The silence cut sharper than anything. He didn't move, didn't blink, didn't deny it. She didn't push. She let the moment sit. The ride continued. Quiet, final. And the next day, the driver handed her a folded piece of paper. Raina unfolded the note with steady fingers. The handwriting was neat. All uppercase. Friday, Shoreline Residences, Penthouse, 7:30 p.m. You deserve to know. No name. But she knew who had written it. Mr. Lonnie, Dorian's personal driver for the past 9 years, had always treated Raina like a daughter. He was the only one on Dorian's staff who spoke to her like she was more than a display, always asked about her family, always held the door with care, not duty. The paper had been slipped into her coat pocket without a word. He hadn't even looked her in the eyes, but the message said everything. Raina folded the note again and tucked it into her wallet like it was a warning and a gift at the same time. She didn't cry, didn't panic. She waited, and when Friday came, she didn't make up an excuse or pretend to be busy. She simply said she had dinner plans with Mila. Dorian barely looked up from his laptop. Tell her I said hi. At 7:10 p.m., Raina pulled into a grocery store parking lot and switched into a nondescript rental car. Mila had arranged it through a private service. No name on file, no trace back to her. She drove to Shoreline Residences, a high-rise overlooking the Pacific. Sleek and silent, with reflective glass and private elevators. Dorian had helped finance the property 5 years ago, said it was for quiet luxury clientele. Now she understood the irony. She parked across the street in a loading zone, slouched low in the seat. A hoodie pulled over her hair. She didn't bring Mila. She didn't bring a camera. Just her eyes, her heart, and a small notepad to document every second. At 7:26 p.m., Dorian's Escalade turned the corner. Her fingers gripped the steering wheel. She could tell it was him by the way the headlights didn't hesitate, by the familiar silhouette in the back seat. Still, composed, untouchable. The building valet opened the door, and then she saw her, Sasha Morgan. Raina blinked hard. Her stomach turned. She knew that name. She had once Googled it out of innocent curiosity early in her marriage. Dorian's ex from his late 20s. Sasha had worked in luxury branding, and had vanished from the spotlight after their breakup. Tall, auburn hair, glasses she always wore on her head like a crown. And there she was, stepping out of Raina's husband's car, wearing a black dress, laughing, lightly touching his arm. Raina stopped breathing. She didn't know what she expected, but not this, not intimacy, not ease, not the kind of familiarity that comes from shared history and recent visits. They walked into the building together. No hurry, no shame. The doorman greeted them like it wasn't their first time. Raina checked the time. 7:34 p.m. They didn't look back. She stayed in that car for another 30 minutes. Watched the light on the penthouse floor turn on. Watched it dim. She imagined everything. And somehow, imagining hurt more than knowing. She didn't cry. Not there. Not in front of that building that held her husband's betrayal like a secret suite. She started the engine, pulled away, and drove with no direction, just distance. By the time she reached Topanga Canyon, the sun had dipped behind the hills. The road curved like a ribbon through trees that whispered in the wind. Raina parked by the trailhead, where her father once took her hiking every Sunday before his heart attack changed everything. She walked up the dirt path, leaves crunching under her boots, stopped by the old eucalyptus tree, and sat down. No makeup, no heels, no audience, just her and the truth. The silence hit harder than the lie, because it confirmed everything she had been trying not to believe for months. She pulled her knees to her chest and thought about the woman she used to be. The Raina who smiled freely, who danced barefoot in her apartment before Dorian, who laughed loudly in dive diners and never once worried if someone was watching. She had disappeared slowly, not all at once, piece by piece. A compromise here, a silence there, an ignored red flag, a calendar sync, a where were you, a soft lie wrapped in luxury. Now, here she was, sitting on dirt, worth millions on paper, but bankrupt in love. She whispered to the tree like it could hold her pain, "I didn't deserve this." The wind rustled the leaves in agreement. Raina stayed until the stars came out. She let the cold settle into her arms. She let the ache bloom fully. No distractions, no whine, no excuses, only truth. And when she stood up again, something in her spine had returned. Not vengeance, not rage. Clarity, the kind that doesn't need drama, the kind that moves quietly. Like a woman who knows her exit matters more than her explanation. She walked back to her car, started the engine, and headed home. The Carrington estate was still when she returned. Lights dimmed, the long hallway stretching like a runway of quiet judgment. Raina closed the front door softly, like she didn't want to wake the ghosts of her old life. She didn't hang up her coat. She didn't take off her shoes. She went straight to the walk-in closet, flipped on the warm white lights, and stared at the rows of designer heels, curated handbags, and silk dresses that had once meant something. She stepped around the center island and pulled down the largest Louis Vuitton luggage she owned. Then, she opened drawers. Slowly. She didn't rush. She didn't slam. She packed deliberately, like someone closing a chapter, knowing full well this wasn't just a suitcase. It was the line between who she was told to be and who she was about to become. 2 pairs of jeans, 3 oversized sweaters, sneakers, 1 photograph of her parents on the Santa Monica Pier, and her grandmother's Bible, still bookmarked with a sprig of lavender from her wedding bouquet. She zipped the bag closed and placed it by the door. She wasn't done yet. In the upstairs office, Raina sat at the marble desk and pulled out a yellow notepad. Her handwriting was calm, elegant, Dorian. "Since you like tracking things, you'll know I left. Where I'm going now, that's finally mine. Raina." She left the note under his favorite glass paperweight, a polished black stone etched with the word vision. Then, she walked into the master bedroom for the last time. The bed was made, perfectly, the same way she used to make it every morning before the house staff took over. She sat on the edge, looked at the clock, 2:19 a.m., and let herself feel the weight of everything she wasn't taking with her. Not the house, not the name, not the man, just herself. And for once, that was enough. By sunrise, she was in Santa Clarita. Mila had helped her secure a modest rental. 1 bedroom, 1 bath, street parking, small front steps that creaked when she walked up. It wasn't gated, wasn't polished, but it felt honest. She unlocked the front door and stepped into the space with a long exhale. White walls, wooden floors, a tiny kitchen with an old fridge humming softly. She left her suitcase at the door, walked to the window, and cried. Not because she was weak, but because she was finally safe. Over the next week, Raina disappeared from every guest list, photo op, and headline. The media hadn't caught wind of the separation. Dorian hadn't made a move yet. Maybe he was pretending too, but Raina didn't wait for his reaction. She built her own routine. She made her own coffee. She went on quiet walks with Mila. She journaled every morning. And most importantly, she started breathing again. No one asked where she was. And for once, no one watched her. One afternoon, she sat on the porch reading a novel when a man appeared by her gate. Early 30s, medium build, caramel-toned skin, strong jaw, worn boots, a tool belt slung over one shoulder. He smiled like he wasn't sure if he was interrupting. "Sorry to bother. I'm Raphael, Mila's cousin. She said you needed help with a loose cabinet hinge." Raina blinked, then laughed. "That cabinet's been loose since I moved in." He stepped closer. "Got time now?" She nodded. "Yeah, sure. Come in." He didn't say much at first, walked straight to the kitchen, studied the hinge, worked quietly. His hands were steady, movements thoughtful. She leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "Do you fix everything this calmly?" He smiled. "Helps when the house isn't screaming back." She raised a brow. "You fix loud houses?" "Used to. Grew up in one." She tilted her head. "You and Mila, close?" "Since we were kids. She's the fire. I'm the hammer." Raina chuckled. "That tracks." He tightened the last screw and wiped his hands. "It's done." She walked over, tested the cabinet. Smooth. "Well, Raphael the hammer." "Thank you." He looked at her, not in the way men scan for attraction, but in the way people look when they're curious. "You're welcome." Then, just as he reached the door, he paused. "If you ever need help with anything else, I'm 2 streets over." She smiled politely. Noted. He left, and she stood there, suddenly aware that her kitchen felt warmer than it had all week. That night, Raina couldn't sleep. Not because of Dorian, but because for the first time, she felt something stir in her chest that wasn't sadness. It was quiet interest. She wasn't ready for anything. She knew that. But the way Raphael had looked at her, it wasn't like Dorian. There was no weight behind it. No pressure, just presence. And for a woman rebuilding from control, that meant everything. If you've ever had to walk away quietly, not because you were weak, but because staying meant losing yourself, this part of Raina's journey is for you. Have you ever left behind a life that looked perfect, to find peace no one could give you? Comment below, peace over perfection, if that resonates with you. Share this video with someone who's rebuilding from the inside out. Tap subscribe if you believe that true strength is found in silence, not control. Raphael showed up again 2 days later, with no tools this time. Raina had been in the kitchen, barefoot, hair tied up, humming as she tried to make pancakes that didn't come from a boxed mix. She wasn't expecting anyone. The knock on the door startled her. When she opened it, Raphael stood there holding a brown paper bag. "Your cousin says you're not eating anything green," he said with a grin. "So, I brought guilt in a bag." She blinked. "What is that?" "Spinach, kale, avocado, and the good kind of peanut butter." Raina looked at him for a moment. She could have shut the door. She could have said she was busy. She could have gone back to pretending her life hadn't cracked. But she didn't. She stepped aside. "Come in." They ate lunch at her small kitchen table. Nothing fancy, no plated servers, No white-gloved staff, just two people. Slices of avocado toast and quiet laughter that reminded her what real sounded like. "So," he said, sipping from a mason jar of lemon water, "what's the story?" Raina froze. "What do you mean?" "You don't have to tell me," he said quickly. "I'm not fishing. I'm just saying. The kind of peace you're wearing usually comes after a storm." She set her fork down. "What if the storm never really hit? What if it's just been building for years, and I only just noticed the clouds?" Raphael nodded slowly. "Then you did the bravest thing. You moved before it drowned you." She didn't respond, but her eyes softened. He got it, without needing details, without needing dirt. Over the next week, Raphael became part of the quiet rhythm in her life. He didn't push, didn't flirt. He brought coffee once, fixed a jammed window, painted a chipped corner of her porch without being asked. Sometimes they talked. Sometimes they sat in silence. He made it easy, and Raina hadn't felt easy in a long, long time. One afternoon, as they watered the tiny herb garden she had started in mismatched pots by the kitchen window, Raina looked at him. "Why are you being so nice to me?" Raphael shrugged. "You seem like someone who forgot what soft feels like." That answer stuck with her, not because it was smooth, because it was true. But just as things were beginning to feel steady, Dorian's shadow crept back in. Raina had ignored the emails. She hadn't responded to his assistant's inquiries. She hadn't looked at the phone bill, or the private number that kept calling at night and hanging up after one ring. But one evening, while she was washing dishes, her phone buzzed again. Blocked number. She let it ring. It stopped. Then came the text. "This isn't over. Please talk to me." Her hands shook, not from fear, from frustration. Because Dorian never asked. He only demanded. Even now he wasn't saying, "I'm sorry." He was saying, "Talk to me." As if that fixed surveillance. As if that erased Sasha Morgan in the penthouse suite. As if that made anything okay. She deleted the message, then shut the phone off. That night, she sat outside, under the string lights Raphael had helped her install across the porch. The air smelled of jasmine and grilled peaches. He joined her without asking. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded. "Just clearing out the noise." He looked at her. "Want to talk?" No. He stayed anyway. And that was when she realized something. Dorian had built a kingdom around her, yes, but Raphael was building space with her. No expectations, no tracking, just presence. The next morning, Raina got a knock at her door. Mila, face tight, laptop bag slung over her shoulder. "I need you to sit," she said. "Now." Raina led her in and closed the door. Mila dropped into the chair and opened her laptop. "I got this last night from a journalist friend at the LA Herald. They're asking questions. Someone leaked your address." Raina's chest tightened. "Dorian?" "Probably his legal team trying to make you panic. They want you to talk, to react. You need to be ahead of this." Raina's voice stayed calm. "I'm not going back." Mila smiled. "Didn't think you would." She pulled out a document. "We need to draft a privacy motion, and you'll need a statement ready, just in case. Something that says you've chosen peace and are not interested in public drama." Raina nodded. She glanced outside the window where Raphael was trimming the edge of her walkway, headphones in, lost in his own world. She whispered, "They don't get to shake this peace." Mila nodded. "Then let's protect it." Later that day, Raina sat with Mila at the dining table, a blank notepad in front of her. The breeze slipped through the open window, fluttering the corners of the legal documents Mila had brought. "You don't have to say anything too personal," Mila said. "You're not defending yourself, you're declaring your right to silence." Raina tapped the edge of the notepad. "What if I'm tired of being quiet?" Mila looked up. "I don't mean messy," Raina continued. "But maybe it's time I stopped protecting the man who wasn't protecting me." Mila closed the folder. "Say what you need. I'll tighten the language later." Raina wrote, "I left because being watched in a mansion felt lonelier than being seen in a one-bedroom. Because power without intimacy is just performance. And because I refuse to explain why I no longer want to be where love has been replaced by surveillance. She slid the pad toward Mila. Mila read it. Once, then again. This is solid. Raina gave a small nod. Let them see me now, not the one he made up. By Friday, the online gossip cycle had begun to spin. Anonymous posts, speculations, a grainy photo of Raina at a Santa Clarita farmer's market made its way to a tabloid blog. Where's Mrs. Carrington? Rumors of a quiet exit stir questions. Dorian's PR firm released a vague statement about privacy during transitional moments. He hadn't called again, but she knew he was watching. Not through a tracker this time. Through headlines. Through the silence he had built, now turned against him. That afternoon, Raphael brought over tools to fix the screen door. Raina watched him from the porch steps, a bottle of iced tea in her hands. You always find something to work on, she said. He looked up. You always seem like you're building something worth showing up for. She tilted her head. What do you think I'm building? Boundaries. A home. Yourself. She let that sit for a moment. Then asked, do you ever get tired of being the quiet one? He shrugged. Noise doesn't mean truth. Some things don't need to be said out loud to be felt. She smiled. You keep saying things like that, she warned, and I might start thinking you're not just here for repairs. He grinned, wiped sweat from his brow, and replied, good. Because I'm not. That night, Raina invited him to stay for dinner. They didn't order takeout. They cooked. Nothing fancy. Pasta, roasted vegetables, a lemon cake mix she nearly ruined by forgetting the eggs. But the laughter, real. The glances, unspoken. The space between them, starting to close. They sat on the porch after dinner, under those same string lights, full and warm, the air between them thick with something unspoken. Raphael leaned back in the chair. So what happens now? Raina looked at him, serious. What do you mean? With the past? With him? She took a breath. I let it finish. He nodded. And with me? She didn't flinch. I let it begin, but the past wasn't done knocking. The next morning, a legal courier showed up at her doorstep. Raphael answered the door before Raina could get there. The man handed him a sealed envelope, nodded, and walked off. Raina opened it. Inside, an official paternity request from Dorian's attorneys. He knew, or at least suspected. She sat down slowly, heart pounding. She hadn't even taken a test, but she knew her body, her cycle, her shifts. The baby inside her had a story, and it started before Raphael ever stepped into her life. She looked up at him. Raphael. He didn't flinch. Is it his? She nodded once. I think so. He stepped forward, sat beside her, held her hand. Do you want to keep it? Yes. He tightened his grip. Then I'm in. She blinked. Even if I'm not here because of the past, he said. I'm here because of you, and if this child's part of your future, I'll love them like they're mine. Her breath hitched. That moment broke something loose in her. Something guarded. Something she hadn't realized she still kept locked. Later that night, Raina sat alone in her bedroom, one hand over her stomach, the other clutching. A photo of herself at age 10, standing between her parents outside a community center. She whispered, I will not let this child grow up around control. I will not raise them in fear. I will not let a mansion become a cage. She had no doubt Dorian would fight, not because he wanted the baby, but because he didn't like losing. But Raina wasn't fighting anymore. She was protecting. There was a difference. Raina didn't answer the door when Dorian came. She knew he was there, not just because of the knock, but because Raphael saw the car first. A matte black Range Rover, tinted. Idle. Guarded presence. Raphael had been trimming the front hedges when he glanced up, paused, and walked straight into the house. You have company, he said. Raina looked up from her tea. He didn't need to say the name. She stood, calm, certain. Dorian didn't deserve a panic. He didn't deserve a performance. But he did deserve her silence. And that's what she gave him. When she stepped out onto the porch, Dorian was standing by the gate in a grey tailored suit. Casual for him. Intentional, maybe, as if trying not to intimidate. But intimidation had never been her problem. It was his absence that broke her. She opened the gate without a word. He looked at her with those unreadable eyes, still perfectly polished, still withholding warmth. But something in them flickered. He looked thinner, paler, like someone who'd been losing sleep and couldn't admit why. "Raina," he said. She nodded once. "You're here. I didn't know where else to go." "Then you should have stayed where you were." He followed her silently inside, noticing everything. The smallness of the space, the handmade pillows, the faint scent of eucalyptus in the air. This wasn't his world. No towering ceilings, no touch screens, no curated marble. This was a woman's home, lived in, light, breathing. They sat across from each other at the kitchen table. Raphael stayed outside. Dorian broke the silence first. "I didn't authorize the legal motion. You didn't stop it either," Raina replied. He nodded. "Fair." Another pause. Then, "Are you pregnant?" She held his gaze. "Yes." A long beat passed. He swallowed. "Is it mine?" She didn't soften. "Yes." His breath faltered. For the first time, his mask cracked, just slightly. "I didn't know. You weren't supposed to." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because you don't track a woman you trust," she said flatly. "You don't betray her with your ex, and you don't get to ask questions when all you ever gave were commands." He flinched, but he didn't deny it. That was the first honest thing he'd done in months. "I made a mistake," he said quietly. "You made a choice." He nodded again, slower. "I was afraid of losing control." "You were never in control, Dorian," she said, voice low. "You were just keeping score." He looked down at his hands. "When did we break?" She almost laughed. "You never asked that when I was still there." "I thought you were happy." "No, you thought I was quiet. That's not the same thing." Another silence stretched between them. This one, heavier. She could tell he was trying. For once. But trying doesn't heal what someone ignored for years. "I'm in therapy," he said. "I've been going every week." Raina raised a brow. He continued. "I've had to confront everything. The need for control, my father, how I saw love like an asset instead of a commitment." She nodded once. "I'm not here to win you back," he said. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry. And I'm trying to be better, even if it's too late." She stared at him. And for the first time since she left, she didn't feel anger. She felt clarity. "You don't need to be better for me," she said. "You need to be better for whoever you choose to love next. Because this," she motioned between them, "is over. Not out of hate. Out of truth." He nodded again. Slower this time. "But I will co-parent with you," she added, "if that's what you want. Respectfully. With boundaries." He looked down, then met her eyes. "I want to be in the child's life. I don't want to be like my father." Then act differently than he did. They stood. No hug, no handshake. Just understanding. He walked to the door, pausing before stepping out. "Is he good to you?" Raina didn't answer right away, but her voice, when it came, was strong. "He doesn't track me. He knocks." Dorian nodded once, then left. Raina watched the Range Rover disappear. Her chest rose and fell slowly. She wasn't relieved. She wasn't wrecked. She was free, because finally, the past wasn't chasing her anymore. It was walking away. The door clicked shut behind Dorian, and Raina didn't move. She stood in the center of her living room, with her hands clasped, watching the soft sway of the curtain near the window. It felt like the wind was exhaling too, like the house could finally breathe again. Raphael didn't come inside right away. He was giving her space. That was the difference. Dorian waited until he'd done damage to explain. Raphael waited to be invited in. When she finally stepped outside, Raphael was sitting on the porch steps, elbows on his knees, looking out toward the street. He glanced up when he heard her. "Everything all right?" he asked. She nodded. "It is now." She sat beside him, the quiet between them easy. He asked if the baby was his, she said after a pause. "I figured." I told him yes. Raphael looked down at his hands. "Okay." He also said he's in therapy, trying to be better. Raphael gave a slow nod. "Do you believe him?" "I believe he's trying, but not for me. That part's over." Raphael didn't say anything, just reached for her hand. She laced her fingers into his. That small gesture grounded her more than any apology ever could. The next few days passed gently. Raina added soft things to the house. A new blanket for the couch. A wind chime on the back porch. A tiny glass jar of buttons she kept for no real reason except that they reminded her of her grandmother. She cooked. Nothing fancy, but meals that made the house smell like home. She laughed more, and she began journaling each night, small entries about how she felt, what the baby might be like, what kind of mother she wanted to become. She wrote about presence, about safety, about how healing didn't feel like fireworks. It felt like soft, consistent light. One morning, she found Raphael in the backyard, digging out weeds along the fence. "You don't have to keep fixing everything," she teased from the porch. He wiped sweat from his brow and grinned. "I know. But I like making things better." She came down the steps, barefoot. "Then let me do something for you." "Oh, yeah." She reached for his hand, led him inside, and handed him a small gift box from the kitchen drawer. He opened it to find a simple leather keychain with a house charm. "Figured it was time you stopped knocking." His expression softened, eyes dipping with emotion. "You sure?" She nodded. "You've been showing up since the moment you met me. You've earned a key." He didn't say thank you. He kissed her forehead instead. That evening, Raphael stayed for dinner, and stayed after. They curled on the couch, his arm draped around her, her head resting on his chest. Her hand absent-mindedly rested on her stomach, the small bump not yet showing but already deeply real. "You're gonna be amazing," Raphael said quietly. She smiled. "You don't even know what kind of mom I'll be." "I know you," he replied. She closed her eyes, let his warmth settle into her skin. "I want this baby to know love," she whispered. "Not control, not expectation, just love." "They will," Raphael said, "because they'll have you." The next morning, Raina got a call from Mila. She answered on speaker while making oatmeal. "He's requesting visitation." No drama yet, just a formal inquiry to discuss shared parenting. Raina didn't flinch. "We can talk. As long as it stays respectful, it will. He knows you're not the same woman who left. He won't try the same games." Raina nodded. "Thank you for the heads up." Mila paused. "You okay?" "I'm becoming okay. I'm proud of you. I'm proud of me too." Raina hung up and turned to Raphael, who had been standing quietly by the doorway sipping coffee. "You sure about this?" he asked. "No. But I'm steady." He nodded. "That's enough." That night, Raina journaled again. "Healing isn't loud. It's not even brave most days. It's just honest, one choice at a time. I'm not fixing what broke. I'm building what's next. And love, real love, is something you feel when no one's looking, not even through a tracker." She closed the notebook, exhaled, and slept soundly. The second trimester came with changes Raina didn't expect. Her appetite returned, stronger. So did the nausea in the mornings, but it no longer made her feel fragile. She felt grounded, present in her body in a way she hadn't in years. Every ache reminded her she was growing something real. She didn't miss the mansion. She didn't miss the chef. She didn't miss the surveillance. She woke up each day to the smell of coffee Raphael made the way she liked, half oat milk, one cinnamon stick in the pot. She planted herbs with her hands, watched paint chip from the fence, and didn't panic. For the first time in her life, her world didn't look curated, but it felt honest. Dorian sent another request through the lawyer. This time, he wanted to meet. Not at the house, not at the mansion. Neutral ground. Mila arranged it at her office, a quiet suite on the 5th floor of a law building, with a private parking entrance and no press. Raina arrived 10 minutes early, hair in a soft bun, loose cream blouse, belly beginning to show. Dorian walked in right on time. He looked different. Smaller, tired, like a man who had stopped controlling the world and started feeling the weight of it. He didn't reach for her hand, didn't try to hug her. "Thank you for agreeing to this," he said. Raina nodded. "I'm here to listen." That's it. They sat across the table. "I've reviewed everything," Dorian began, "and I'd like to request a shared custody agreement. I don't want to complicate your life, Raina. I just want to be involved." She listened carefully, watched his face, not because she distrusted every word, but because she needed to measure intention now, not just tone. "And what does involvement mean to you?" she asked. Dorian leaned forward. "It means being present, picking them up, sharing holidays, attending events, supporting you financially without strings. I don't expect to shape your parenting style, but I want this child to know I tried." She held his gaze. "You once watched every move I made from behind a screen," she said quietly. "You called that protection. How do I know this isn't just another way to stay close?" Dorian didn't blink. "You don't," he said. "But I'm learning how to earn trust, not assume it." They spoke for 40 minutes. Raina didn't agree to anything permanent that day, but she left the office knowing something had changed. Not in Dorian, maybe, but in herself. She didn't need him to break down. She didn't need him to suffer. She needed him to stop pretending she was the problem. And this version of him, more humble, less rehearsed, was a start. Raphael was waiting at home, not pacing, not worried, just folding baby clothes they'd picked up from a local consignment pop-up over the weekend. He looked up as she walked in. "How'd it go?" She kicked off her shoes and sat beside him. "It went," she said, and that was all he needed to hear. That evening, they sat on the floor in the nursery. Raphael held a small onesie that said "Daydreamer" in soft script. "You think it's weird I'm here for this?" he asked. She looked at him. "No, I mean, I'm not the dad." Technically, she placed her hand over his. "You're the one showing up. That counts more than blood." He nodded, but his eyes dipped low for a second, like something still sat heavy in him. She leaned in, kissed the side of his face. "You're not temporary," he whispered. "Okay." 2 days later, Dorian sent a letter, not through his lawyers, not through Mila, handwritten. It wasn't long. "Raina, you were right. I tracked you because I didn't trust the peace we had. I thought love was risk control. I thought knowing your steps meant knowing your heart. I was wrong. You don't owe me forgiveness, but I needed to say that out loud. Thank you for being the only honest thing in my life when I didn't deserve it. Let me know when you're ready to discuss parenting plans. Dorian." She read it twice, then tucked it in a drawer she rarely opened, not to hold on to it, but because it didn't hurt anymore. That, she realized, was the real healing. Not when someone apologized, but when you didn't need it to breathe. The nursery wasn't finished, but it was already hers. Soft beige walls. A single rocking chair she bought at a second-hand furniture store. No Pinterest board, no high-end theme. Just real warmth, real wood, real choices made from love, not brand deals. Raina stood by the window one morning, palm resting on her belly, coffee mug in her other hand. The baby had kicked for the first time the night before. Just once. But it felt like everything. She hadn't told Dorian. Not yet. She hadn't told Raphael either, not because she was hiding it, but because she wanted the moment to belong to her first. That morning, she wrote in her journal, "You moved, just once, just enough to remind me you're here, that this isn't a story about leaving, it's about continuing." Raphael came home from a job site just after noon, dust on his shirt, calloused hands, a smile that looked like home. Raina had made a grilled cheese and tomato soup. Nothing fancy, but he lit up like she'd served filet mignon. "You spoil me," he said, kissing her cheek. You show up, she answered. They ate on the porch, the sun warming their skin, neighbors passing by and waving. Raphael tapped his spoon on the rim of his bowl. I've been thinking, he said. She raised a brow. Dangerous. He grinned. I know we haven't talked labels or future stuff, but if this is going to be our life, maybe we should think about making it official. I mean, not pressure, just clarity. Raina held his gaze. There was no ring, no rehearsed speech, just honesty, and it was enough. She set her spoon down. You're already raising this child with me. What's more official than that? He blinked. So, is that a yes? She smiled. That's a yes. We'll figure it out our way. No expectations, no courthouse deadline. Just keep showing up. He reached across the table and held her hand. That I can do. Later that week, Dorian asked to meet. Raina agreed, but only with Mila present. This time, Raphael came with her. He didn't sit in on the conversation. He waited outside, near the elevators, arms crossed, quiet but protective. Dorian noticed, and for the first time, instead of posturing, he just nodded respectfully. Inside the conference room, Raina sat across from him with Mila at her side. She looked calm, firm, not guarded, just grounded. I've drafted a preliminary co-parenting schedule, Dorian said, sliding a folder across the table. Mila opened it, skimmed. Raina waited. I know I lost the right to lead anything, Dorian continued. So this is just a proposal. You can change whatever you want. Raina spoke clearly. I want structure, no pop-ins, no emotional manipulation. This child won't be raised in confusion. Dorian nodded. I agree, Mila added. There will be a public clause. No media leaks, no paparazzi tips. You protect the child's privacy or forfeit visitation. Understood. Raina paused. And Raphael will be a part of their life, fully. Dorian looked at her, and for once, instead of tensing, he breathed in and said, He seems like a good man. That night, Raina sat with Raphael on the couch. You all right? He asked. She nodded. It's not perfect, but it's progress. He kissed her knuckles. You're doing this with so much grace. She rested her head on his shoulder. I'm not trying to be graceful. I'm just trying not to lose myself again. You won't. I won't let you. And she believed him. Not because he promised, but because he'd already proved it. At 4:11 a.m., Raina woke up to a sharp nudge in her belly. The baby kicked again, stronger this time. She gasped softly and placed her hand there, then gently nudged Raphael awake. He blinked, groggy. What's wrong? She grabbed his hand, pressed it over the spot. A moment passed. Then, another kick. Raphael's eyes widened. He grinned. That was real. Raina laughed, tears slipping down her cheeks. That's our kid saying good morning, she whispered. Raphael kissed her forehead, and in that still, quiet moment, there were no courts, no press, no threats, no pain, just love, kicking, growing, real. The doctor said the baby was healthy, growing well, strong heartbeat. Raina lay back on the exam table, eyes wide, as the monitor displayed the grainy, flickering shape of the life inside her. She clutched Raphael's hand, and when the baby kicked again, right there on the screen, she let herself cry. Not from fear, not from doubt, from wonder. Do you want to know the gender? The nurse asked gently. Raina looked at Raphael, then back at the screen. She shook her head. Not yet, she whispered. Let the baby tell us when they're ready. Raphael smiled. That sounds like you. The ride home was quiet in a comforting way. Raina stared out the window, still processing what she'd seen. A spine, a head, a foot that curled like a comma. I don't know why, she said softly, but it finally feels real. Not just emotionally, physically. Raphael glanced at her. That's a big moment. I used to think I needed everything planned. A Pinterest-perfect nursery, designer crib, matching diaper bag sets. And now? Now I want peace, and people who ask instead of assume, and space for this child to feel safe. Raphael nodded. Then we're already winning. At home, Raina stood in the nursery again, still half finished. A single bookshelf, a rocking chair, a tiny basket with baby books. She reached down, picked up one with a soft cloth cover. You are my favorite hello. Inside was a dedication page. She hadn't written anything in it yet. She sat cross-legged on the floor and slowly wrote, "To the child who made me brave again. You reminded me that love doesn't monitor or follow or take. It stands still, quietly waiting to be welcomed. You are welcome here. Always." That evening, Dorian texted, "Thank you for the meeting. I'm doing my part from here. Let me know if you need anything." She stared at the message for a moment, then typed back, "We're okay. We'll let you know when needed. Thank you." No extra words, no doors reopened, only boundaries. That night, Raphael stood in front of the bathroom mirror brushing his teeth. Raina walked in behind him, holding a small white envelope. He glanced at her reflection. "What's that?" She placed it on the counter. "My name change paperwork." He turned to face her. Toothbrush paused mid-air. "You're dropping Carrington?" She nodded. "Going back to my maiden name." He searched her face. She smiled. "Not because I'm angry. Because I'm free." He leaned in, kissed her softly. "Then I'll toast to that." The next weekend, they drove up to Ojai for a short getaway. Just the two of them. Raina had found a cozy cabin on a quiet road, surrounded by citrus trees and wide skies. They spent the mornings walking barefoot in the grass, afternoons reading on the porch swing, nights wrapped in silence, broken only by crickets and their quiet laughter. It wasn't luxury. It wasn't curated. It was theirs. On their final night, Raina looked over at Raphael as he stacked their dinner plates in the sink. "You know what I used to believe?" she asked. He looked up. "What's that?" "That love had to feel like adrenaline to mean something." Fast replies. Big gestures. Constant access. Raphael smiled. "And now? Now I believe in slowness. In someone asking, 'Are you tired?' instead of, 'Why didn't you respond?'" He crossed the room and pulled her into him. "That's the kind of love I've got." She rested her head on his chest. "That's the kind I'm keeping." That night, she slept without dreams, and woke up to the baby moving again, small steady reminders that the new life inside her wasn't waiting for permission to grow. It simply did, just like she had. Back home from Ojai, the house felt quieter in the best way, like it had taken a deep breath in their absence and was now resting. Raina walked through the front door with one hand on her belly, the other still clutching the little linen bag of lavender she picked up from a roadside farm stand. The scent had followed her home, soft and calming, like the trip itself. Raphael set the bags down and walked to the kitchen to put the perishables away. "Still want that peppermint tea?" he called out. She smiled from the hallway. "Only if you'll sit with me while it steeps. That's non-negotiable." They sat on the porch swing together, mugs in hand. The wind moved slowly, as if even it didn't want to disturb the peace they'd found. Raina looked over at Raphael, eyes soft. "I haven't had a single bad dream since we left. You think it was the mountain air or the company?" he asked, teasing. She shrugged with a smirk. "Both. But mostly the company." He leaned his shoulder into hers gently. "Good, because I plan to stay." She didn't reply. She just rested her head against him and closed her eyes. The next afternoon brought a light knock on the door. Raphael was out back finishing the planter boxes. Raina opened it, expecting Mila or a delivery. Instead, she found Dorian's mother, Claudia Carrington, flawless as ever in tailored cream linen and nude heels, sunglasses pushed to the top of her hair like a crown. Raina stood still. Claudia took off her glasses. "May I come in?" Raina stepped aside but didn't say yes. Claudia took it as permission anyway. Inside, she looked around, one glance sweeping the room like an appraiser sizing up a property. Simple, she said. Peaceful, Raina corrected. Claudia turned. That's what this is. Raina folded her arms. What do you want? I'm not here to fight. I'm here because I saw the statement in the papers. Dorian told me about the baby, and while I disagreed with how he handled everything, I need to know what kind of situation my grandchild is coming into. Raina's jaw tensed. You're not here for peace. You're here for control, just like your son. Claudia's eyes didn't blink. I'm here because I raised a man who made a mistake, a man who wants to correct it, and I want to know if you're going to use that mistake to cut him out of his child's life. Raina didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. I walked away, Claudia. I didn't run. I didn't go to the press. I didn't sell a story or drag your son. I protected myself, and now I'm protecting my child. Claudia nodded slowly. I suppose that's fair, she said after a beat. She glanced around again. You're not who I expected him to fall for. But maybe that's why it mattered. Raina didn't reply. Claudia stepped toward the door, then turned back. Just remember, that child carries the Carrington name. Raina stepped closer. No, they don't. Claudia froze. They carry mine. They carry their mother's peace. And if Dorian earns it, they'll know his presence too. But they will never carry his silence, or yours. Claudia stared at her for a long moment, then left without another word. Raphael returned 20 minutes later to find Raina on the couch, one hand wrapped around a warm tea mug, the other gently rubbing her belly. He raised an eyebrow. You okay? She nodded. I had a visitor. Should I be worried? She gave a tired smile. Not anymore. I said what I needed to. He walked over, sat beside her, and kissed the back of her hand. You're stronger than you know, he said. I know, she whispered. Now, that night, Raina stood in front of the nursery bookshelf again. She reached for the baby journal, flipped to the next page, and wrote, Today, I protected your name. I told the past it no longer gets to claim you. You are more than a legacy. You are a beginning, and I will protect that with everything I have. If you've ever had to reclaim your name, your voice, or your peace, this chapter was for you. Drop a comment. I protect what's mine if you've ever drawn a boundary and stood firm. Share this story with someone who's learning how to love themselves out loud. Tap subscribe if you believe that love isn't loud or forceful. It knocks and waits to be invited in. Raina sat in the middle of the nursery floor, baby clothes folded in neat piles around her. Her belly curved softly beneath her cotton dress, resting gently against her thighs. She ran her hand across a yellow onesie with little embroidered clouds and smiled. There were no cameras in this room, no judgment, no timeline to meet. Just a quiet space where her child would learn the feel of love from the moment they opened their eyes. Raphael walked in, wiping paint from his fingers. We've got a rocking chair upgrade. It no longer creaks. She glanced up. You're a miracle worker. He knelt beside her and kissed her temple. You're the miracle. She shook her head. Don't do that. Don't make me cry before lunch. But she was already blinking fast. Hormones, yes. But also joy, real joy. The kind that doesn't have to hide beneath performance. Later that day, she and Raphael went to a local parenting class, one that Mila had suggested. Nothing corporate, nothing curated, just folding chairs in a community center and couples in mismatched clothes. Raina felt her nerves prickle the moment she stepped in. Would people stare? Would they recognize her? But when she looked around, no one flinched. They saw a woman holding her back straight, with a belly full of life and a man beside her who never let go of her hand. They saw exactly who she was now, and that was enough. The instructor, a retired nurse named Miss Cora, handed out practice dolls and asked each couple to try swaddling. Raphael unrolled the muslin cloth like it was a blue-collar blueprint. You fold this like drywall corners? He asked. Miss Cora laughed. If that helps. Yes. Raina watched him carefully tuck the doll in. Neat, gentle. then cradle it like he'd done this before. "You sure you haven't done this?" she whispered. He smirked. "YouTube. 2 hours last night." "Why?" "Because I want to be ready before the crying starts." She didn't respond. She just stared at him, this man who didn't share DNA with the baby, but shared every moment that mattered. When they got home, Raina received a text from Dorian. "My attorney shared the revised schedule. Let me know what needs adjusting." She responded hours later. "It looks reasonable. We'll review once the baby is here. For now, keep your team close. I don't want them showing up at my door." He replied immediately. "Understood. No contact unless initiated by you. I'll respect that." She looked at the message, then set her phone down. She wasn't bitter. She was just done. There was a difference. That evening, Raphael made dinner, stuffed peppers and roasted potatoes, and Raina sat on the counter watching him. He moved with ease, humming under his breath. "You know," she said, "you didn't sign up for any of this." He glanced at her, eyes soft. "Didn't I? You knew I was pregnant. You knew the father was someone else. And I still showed up. Why?" He paused, then walked over, placed his hands gently on either side of her hips. "Because I saw the way you held yourself together when your whole life was unraveling. And I knew. If you loved this baby with even half that strength, I wanted to be part of whatever you built next." She touched his chest. "Raphael, no pressure," he whispered. "No label rush. Just know that I'm not going anywhere." They went to bed in comfortable silence, her head against his chest, his hand resting on the small movements inside her. And for the first time since leaving Dorian, she wasn't running. She was home. The weeks passed faster now. Raina found herself nesting, folding laundry she'd already folded, rearranging the small nursery drawers, wiping down kitchen counters that didn't need cleaning. It wasn't nervous energy. It was focus, a desire for readiness, not perfection, just peace. She spoke to the baby often, soft, rambling monologues as she made tea or sat in the rocking chair. "I hope you grow up never confusing attention with love," she whispered one afternoon. "I hope you know how to rest, not just run. I hope you never have to choose silence to keep someone." She rested both hands on her belly and smiled. "And I hope you like sweet potatoes, because apparently I crave nothing else lately." Raphael started building a bassinet by hand. No YouTube this time, no instructions. He set up a workspace in the garage, and Raina caught him one night sanding. The frame in quiet concentration, soft music playing in the background. "You're taking this serious," she teased. He smiled without looking up. "This baby deserves something made with love. And you do too." She stepped inside, watching the way his hands moved, intentional, careful. "You could have walked away when I told you it wasn't yours." He finally looked at her. "But it is mine, not by blood, by choice." She blinked, swallowing hard. "And you? You didn't have to choose me either." "I wasn't choosing safety," she said. "I was choosing someone who stayed without being asked." A few days later, Mila stopped by with a gift basket full of things only a woman who's walked through pregnancy herself would think to bring: compression socks, stretch mark balm, oversized chocolate bars, and a heating pad. Raina hugged her tight. "I saw Claudia at a gala," Mila said as she sat. "She pretended like she didn't recognize me." Raina raised an eyebrow. "Sounds right. She asked someone if you were still in that little house out in the suburbs." Raina smirked. "You told her." "I said yes, and that the little house had more peace in one hallway than her entire estate." They both laughed. Mila's expression softened. "You okay, Raina? Not just surviving?" Raina thought for a second. "I think I'm becoming okay in a way that doesn't need proving." That night, Dorian sent a check, not a wire transfer, not a corporate transaction, a physical check. A handwritten note attached said, "For prenatal care, with respect for your decisions, no expectations, no terms. If you return it, I'll understand." Raina showed it to Raphael. He looked at the envelope, then at her. "What do you want to do?" She folded it in half and slid it into a drawer. I'm not cashing it, but I'm not sending it back either. Why? Because it's not a gesture of control. For once, it feels like responsibility. He nodded. You don't owe him anything. But the baby might deserve to see he tried. One morning, while sorting through a box of Raina's childhood books, Raphael found a worn photograph. Young Raina, probably 10 years old, standing barefoot on a picnic blanket beside her father, grinning through missing teeth. Raphael studied it. You look wild, he said with a laugh. I was, she replied, before all the rules came. Bring that girl back, he said. I'm trying. You're doing it. She looked at the photo. She was brave. She didn't ask permission to be loved. Raphael kissed her shoulder. She still lives here. You've just been busy making space for her again. 1 week later, Raina felt the first real wave of discomfort, low back pain, pressure, and a heaviness that told her the baby was beginning to prepare. She sat down slowly at the dining table, hand on her lower belly. Raphael looked up from the sink. Everything okay? She nodded. I think the countdown's starting. His expression changed, alert, calm. He walked over, knelt beside her chair. Want to practice breathing again? She chuckled. Now, why not? So they did. In, out, hands laced. Her eyes closed. The world, quiet. Afterward, she wrote in her journal, You are almost here. The world outside is messy, but the space we've made for you isn't. You'll know love not by what it demands, but by what it gives. You are not a secret. You are not a trap. You are not a headline or a scandal. You are mine. And you are wanted. Fully. The hospital bag sat by the front door, packed with everything Raina might need. A robe, warm. Socks. A playlist loaded with calming songs, and a folder with her birth plan neatly typed out. Raphael added snacks the night before, a mix of trail mix, energy bars, and peppermint tea. Think of this like a road trip, he said. We don't know how long we'll be stuck in traffic, but we'll make it through. Raina chuckled, pressing a hand to her back. As long as you're not the driver who makes me miss the exit, we'll be fine. I know when to lead, he said, smiling, and when to follow. The due date was 5 days away. Raina could feel her body shifting, the baby pressing lower, sleep becoming a luxury she had to chase. Her ankles swollen, emotions right at the surface, but through it all she felt steady, not ready for everything, but ready enough. Mila stopped by with updated legal forms for Dorian's visitation agreement. She placed the papers on the dining table and sat across from Raina. Everything is lined up, Mila said. The visitation starts no earlier than 4 weeks after delivery. Neutral location. No overnight stays until the child is 6 months old. And he signed off on it all. Raina breathed out. He didn't push back. Not once. That surprised her. What's his angle? Raina asked. Mila shrugged. Could be guilt. Could be growth. Could be the first time he's realizing power doesn't work in parenting. Raina nodded slowly. Whatever it is, I don't need his explanation. I just need his respect. And he gave it, Mila replied. For now. Later that night, Raina and Raphael went for a walk around the block. Slow, quiet, hand in hand. The stars were out, scattered like spilled salt. The neighborhood was still. The world had paused. Raina leaned into Raphael's arm. I think about the life we almost didn't build. He glanced at her. What do you mean? I almost stayed where I wasn't seen. I almost raised a child in a house full of tension. I almost accepted being monitored instead of loved. Raphael squeezed her hand gently. But you didn't. I left quietly, she said. But I came back loud. He smiled. You didn't come back, Raina. You began. At home, Raphael prepared the bedroom for the possibility of early labor. Extra towels, warm blankets. A list taped to the fridge of everything he'd need to grab if they had to leave quickly. He wasn't a man of many words that week. But everything he did said, I'm here. I'm ready. I've got you. The next morning, Raina received a letter in the mail. No envelope. Hand delivered. It was from Dorian. Raina, I signed every page you asked. Not because I gave up. Because I finally understand love doesn't demand access. It earns it. I won't show up uninvited. I won't use my name to pressure. But if there's ever a moment when our child asks, was he there? I hope the answer can be yes. Not because you made space, but because I earned it. Dorian. She sat with the letter in her lap. She didn't cry. She didn't smile either. It wasn't closure. It wasn't forgiveness. It was a bookmark, a place to return to, if ever needed. That evening, Raphael made her tea and rubbed her feet while she sat back, eyes closed, breath deep. You okay? He asked softly. I am. You scared? A little. You're allowed to be. She looked at him. And you? I'm just waiting for the moment when I finally meet the reason I fell in love with you twice. She blinked. Twice. The day I met you, he said, and the day I watched you fight to become yourself again. She leaned forward, kissed him gently. If I break during labor, she whispered. Don't panic. I won't, he said. I'll hold you until you remember who you are. The first contraction hit just after 3 a.m. It started like a cramp, low and dull. Raina shifted in bed, half asleep, assuming it was another stretch of late pregnancy discomfort. Then the second wave came, tighter, sharper. She sat up slowly, pressing a hand to her stomach. The room was quiet. Moonlight spilled across the hardwood floor. Raphael, she whispered. He stirred immediately. You okay? She nodded. I think it's starting. He was on his feet in seconds. No panic, no chaos, just quiet movement. He helped her out of bed, grabbed her slippers, got the small hospital bag she'd packed weeks ago. He turned on the soft hallway light, set her water bottle by the door, and kissed her temple. Let's time the next one. By 4:15 a.m., the contractions were consistent. Not close enough to rush, not mild enough to ignore. Raina stood in the living room, leaning over the back of the couch, swaying gently as another one crested through her. Raphael stood behind her, steady hands on her lower back, breathing with her. No words, just rhythm. When it passed, she exhaled. You're calm, she said. You're strong, he replied. She gave a weak smile. Let's hope that holds. They arrived at the hospital before sunrise. Raina's hair was tied in a loose braid. Her face was bare. No filter, no polish. Just a woman walking into one of life's oldest storms, with her head up and her heart wide open. The nurse led them to a private room. Warm light. Soft monitor beeps. A window view of the waking city. Raphael helped her change. He stayed beside her as the nurse checked dilation. 4 centimeters, the nurse said. You're in early labor. It could take a while. Raina nodded. Hours passed. Contractions grew. They moved through positions. She walked the hall, sat on a birthing ball, stood in the shower. Raphael was her anchor through it all. When the pain gripped her spine, he gripped her hand. When her voice trembled, he whispered, I'm right here. When her eyes closed and her breathing grew fast, he slowed his own so she could match it. They labored together. It wasn't clean. It wasn't poetic. But it was real. By mid-afternoon, she had reached active labor. The pain had changed, deeper, more primal. It shook her bones, pulled her apart from the inside. She cried out. Tears rolled down her cheeks. I can't do this, she whispered at one point, shaking. You are doing it, Raphael said, kneeling beside her. And when you forget who you are, I'll remind you. Her face crumpled, but she nodded and kept going. At 5:41 p.m., the nurse checked again. 10 centimeters, she said with a warm smile. It's time. Raphael stood at Raina's side, one hand on her shoulder, the other wrapped tightly in hers. The room went quiet, except for the nurse's voice, calm and clear. Push with the next contraction. Raina closed her eyes, waited, felt it build, then pushed. The moment was thunder and stillness at once, pain like fire. Then the sudden, sharp shift of everything leaving her body. Then A cry, not hers, theirs. The baby's first breath met the air. And so did Raina's relief. The nurse held up the child, wet, wiggling, perfect. "It's a girl," she said. Raina broke. Tears ran down her cheeks. She reached out with trembling arms as they laid the baby on her chest. Tiny, warm, breathing against her skin. Raphael stood beside her, silent, overwhelmed. Then the baby let out another cry, and he did too. He kissed Raina's forehead, then kissed the top of the baby's head. "You did it," he whispered. "Both of you." Later, in the soft glow of the recovery room, Raina held her daughter close. She looked at Raphael, sitting beside her in a chair, eyes never leaving the baby. "She doesn't have a last name yet," Raina said softly. He looked at her. "I know what I want it to be," she added, "but I want you to say it first." He swallowed hard. "Yours." Raina nodded. "And yours too. Because love doesn't just share blood, it shows up." She reached for the pen and birth certificate, and for the first time in months, her hand didn't shake. A few hours later, there was a knock at the hospital room door. Mila poked her head in, eyes glassy. "I had to come," she said, stepping inside. She walked over, leaned down, and stared at the baby. "She's real," she whispered. "She's ours," Raina said softly. Mila looked up. "How do you feel?" "Like I left one life and walked straight into the one I was always meant for." That night, while Raphael slept on the couch and Raina rocked her daughter against her chest, she opened her journal and wrote, "Your name is Nia Hope. Nia, for purpose. Hope, because you restored mine. You were born into a world full of noise. But you came through silence. You arrived not to fix me, but to remind me I never needed fixing. You are loved, not tracked, not handled, not studied, loved, fully." The hospital room was still. Only the soft shuffle of nurses and the faint beep of monitors broke the silence. Raina sat upright in bed, her newborn daughter cradled to her chest. Nia's breath was soft and warm against her skin. Her tiny hand curled near her mother's collarbone. Every part of Raina's body ached, but nothing hurt. There was only a fullness, a weight that wasn't burden, but presence. Raphael entered quietly with a tray of food he picked up from downstairs. Nothing fancy, just oatmeal, fruit, and the herbal tea Raina had been craving. "She hasn't moved much," Raina said gently, not taking her eyes off Nia. Raphael leaned over, brushing a kiss on her forehead, then looked down at the baby. "She knows she's safe." They sat in silence, admiring the girl who'd changed everything without saying a single word. Later that morning, the nurse returned with a clipboard. "You're cleared for discharge tomorrow, if everything stays steady." Raina nodded. "Anyone else visiting today?" Raina hesitated, then answered, "Maybe." The nurse smiled. "Then I'll give you some privacy." As she stepped out, Raina looked at Raphael. "Mila let Dorian know. He's coming later today." Raphael didn't flinch. "Okay. He won't stay long. I trust you." She studied his face. "You're not unsettled?" Raphael shook his head. "I don't love what happened between you and him, but I love what we're building more." Raina exhaled, grateful. He just wants to see her, to know she's real. She is, and she's also ours. Alone, no cameras, no assistant, no air of performance. He walked in slowly, pausing by the doorway like a man who didn't want to disturb something sacred. Raina looked up. "Come in." Raphael stood by the window, silent but present. Dorian stepped toward the bed. His eyes locked on Nia, swaddled, asleep in Raina's arms. He swallowed. "She's beautiful. She's mine," Raina said softly. "And she's peaceful." He nodded. "I didn't come to take anything. I just needed to see her with my own eyes." Raina shifted slightly, letting him look closer. He stared for a long time, his jaw tight. A million emotions flickered across his face. "She has your nose," he said. "And my quiet," Raina added. Dorian looked at her then. "You're different." She nodded. "I had to be." He glanced at Raphael, then back at Raina. Thank you for letting me come. I did it for her. So one day, she can say everyone showed up the right way. Dorian's eyes dropped. He nodded. Then he left. No drama, no plea, just a quiet goodbye. After he was gone, Raina looked at Raphael. You okay? He stepped to the bed, kissed the top of her head. That night, Raina changed Nia's diaper for the 3rd time in 2 hours. Raphael helped, handing her wipes, folding the swaddle. Why did no one tell me about the diaper acrobatics? Raina said, laughing as Nia wriggled and squeaked. They were protecting your expectations. Too late for that. They got her clean, warm, swaddled again. Then Raina sat in the rocking chair, cradling her gently, her foot tapping a slow rhythm against the floor. She looked up at Raphael. Do you think we'll get this right? He sat on the floor in front of her, resting his arms on her knees. I think we already are. Raina stared down at Nia's face, peaceful and unaware. She deserves consistency. Not visits every other weekend with forced smiles and rushed apologies. She'll have that, Raphael said. From us? And from him? She asked. Raphael paused, then answered honestly. That's his choice. But you've already built what she needs. Before bed, Raina picked up her journal. She wrote, Nia, today your biological father held the silence he once used to control. He stepped in, then stepped back. And that matters. But more than that, today you learn that family is not about grand gestures. It's who stays through the tiny ones, like diaper changes, midnight yawns, soft humming. You are covered in that kind of love. And you always will be. The day Raina and Nia came home, the world didn't pause. The mail was still piled up on the counter. The neighbor's dog barked like clockwork. And somewhere across town, Dorian's name trended again, not for drama this time, but for the quiet launch of a new foundation focused on urban maternal healthcare. Raina saw the headline. She didn't click the article. At home, the nursery smelled like lavender and baby powder. Raphael had painted the room while she was in labor. Soft almond walls, cream trim, and a mobile of golden stars hung above the crib. Raina stood in the doorway holding Nia, tears silently falling. You did all this, she whispered. Raphael stepped behind her. I wanted her to know she was expected, not as a surprise, but as a gift. Raina turned to face him. You've never asked me for anything, not even a label. I never needed one. He brushed a curl from her face. You called me when you were scared. You trusted me when everything broke. That says more than any ring ever could. The first few nights were brutal. Nia slept in 2-hour stretches. Raina felt her body still adjusting, her emotions raw and unpredictable. She cried when Nia latched. She cried when Nia didn't. She laughed at things that weren't funny. She forgot what day it was. But Raphael never made her feel small for unraveling. He brought warm compresses, rubbed her back when she struggled with breastfeeding, and stocked the fridge with all her favorite snacks. You're showing up like this is your baby, she said once, half asleep. He answered without hesitation. She is. One morning, Raina sat on the couch, Nia asleep on her chest. Raphael stepped out of the shower, a towel around his waist, steam still rising off his skin. She stared at him for a beat too long. Did I leave soap on my face? He asked, grinning. She smiled. No, you're just here, and I'm grateful. He walked over, leaned down, and kissed her on the mouth. Not softly, not like he was scared, but like he finally had permission to. When he pulled back, he said, You're mine, Raina. I've waited long enough for you to know that. She didn't argue, didn't overthink it. She kissed him again. This time, her own fire answered his. A week later, Dorian texted, Can I see her this weekend? Raina stared at the message for a full minute before responding. Yes. Saturday, noon, 1 hour. He replied, Understood. Thank you. She showed Raphael the message. You okay? He asked. She nodded. I'm setting the terms. I'm good. Saturday came. Dorian arrived on time. Alone again. Raina handed Nia to him without drama. He cradled her gently, eyes focused on the baby's face, like it held all his regrets. Raina sat across the room. Dorian spoke, softly. "She feels lighter than I imagined." "She's growing," Raina said. He cleared his throat. "I'm going to give her what I can. I don't want her to lack anything." "She doesn't," Raina answered. I know what you meant. But what she needs is presence and consistency, not guilt money or awkward holidays." Dorian nodded. "I can do that. We'll see." The hour passed without tension. When Dorian left, he didn't ask for more time. He didn't push for more rights. He just looked Raina in the eyes and said, "You're a good mother. Better than I ever imagined." She didn't say thank you. She didn't owe him that. But she nodded. And that was enough. That night, after a late feeding, Raina leaned her head on Raphael's shoulder in bed. The lights were dim. Nia was finally asleep in her bassinet. "Do you think I'm being too strict?" she asked. "No," he said. "Should I let him come around more? You should do what protects your peace. That's your job now." She sighed. "That's the hardest part. Learning to draw the line not out of anger, but out of love." Raphael kissed her temple. "You're doing it." The next morning, Raina scrolled through her emails. One from her former boss caught her eye. Subject line, "Coffee." It had been 6 months since she walked away from that chaotic office, pregnant and unprotected. She opened the message. "Raina, I know things ended on hard terms, but there's a consulting position that could use your eye. Flexible hours, remote. Let me know if you're open to a conversation." She stared at it. Nia cooed in the background. Raphael walked in with her favorite green juice. "You okay?" She turned the screen toward him. "It's from my old job. They want me back, sort of." He read the message, then looked at her. "What do you want?" She thought for a long second. "I want to remember who I was, before I was chasing someone's love, before I was surviving." He nodded. "Then take the meeting. See if it still fits. If it doesn't, we'll figure it out." She smiled. That afternoon, Raina stood in the mirror, hair up, eyes clear, soft makeup. Nia was with Raphael in the nursery. He had a sling on and was humming the same lullaby Raina's mother used to sing. She took a breath, grabbed her laptop, and logged into the call. The job didn't define her, but it reminded her she hadn't disappeared. She was still here, stronger, wiser, a woman who'd loved and lost, and learned not to lose herself again. A quiet Sunday rolled in like a deep breath. Warm light spilled into the nursery as Nia kicked gently in her bassinet, her tiny arms flailing in that clumsy, beautiful way babies moved when everything was new. Raina watched her daughter while folding fresh laundry. The world had finally slowed down enough for her to feel again. The tracker was gone. The fear had quieted. The man who built a world of silence and control no longer lived in her mind. And the one who held her heart. He was humming in the kitchen, stirring waffle batter, shirtless and smiling like the storm had passed. "Waffles?" Raphael asked, poking his head into the room. Raina smiled. "If you made them crispy, is there any other way?" he said, disappearing back down the hall. She followed, stepping into their kitchen, their space, where life now felt like a rhythm, not a performance. They sat at the counter, Nia close by in her seat, babbling softly to her stuffed giraffe. "I've been thinking," Raina said. "Dangerous," Raphael teased. She nudged him with her foot. "Be serious." "I'm listening. I want to do something with what happened. I don't want it to sit like dead weight. I want to build something from it." He leaned in. "Like what?" "A women's center. Something simple at first. Legal help, emergency housing, workshops on how to recognize abuse that doesn't leave bruises." His brow softened. "That's bold." "No," she said. "It's necessary." They spent the next 2 hours mapping out ideas on paper napkins. He'd draw. She'd cross things out. He'd add. She'd highlight. By the end, they had a list of contacts, names of spaces to tour, and ideas for a launch. "I don't need to be famous," Raina said, "but I need to be useful." Raphael kissed her hand. "You already are. But if this helps more women feel what you feel now, free, then I'm in." That night, Raina rocked Nia to sleep. Outside the window, the city glittered. She whispered to her daughter, "You came from a hard truth, baby. But you're not a mistake. You're my beginning." Monday morning, a box arrived. No note, no sender label. Inside was a legal envelope and a delicate gold bracelet, with 3 names etched on the inside. Raina, Nia, Raphael. She blinked back a wave of confusion, then unfolded the document. Custody papers, voluntary withdrawal, signed by Dorian himself. She stood frozen for a moment, the air thin in her lungs. The silence that followed was almost holy. No fight, no legal threats, no smear campaigns, just release. She texted him. "Got it. Thank you." He replied. It was the only thing I could give her without tainting it. When Raphael came home from the store and saw her standing at the doorway with the bracelet on, he knew. "It's over," she said. He took her into his arms. "Then, let's start." They didn't throw a party. They didn't post anything. They didn't even tell their friends yet. But that night, after Raina tucked Nia into her crib and stepped into the kitchen, Raphael stood at the counter with a box in his hand. "Before you say anything," he said, "this isn't a proposal." She raised an eyebrow. "It looks like a ring box." "It is." He opened it. Inside sat a slim band, delicate and strong, engraved on the inside, "Home is her." "I don't need a title to stay," he said. "But if one day you feel ready, this is for you." She didn't cry. She didn't panic. She reached up, kissed him, and whispered, "Not today. But don't hide it. Keep it somewhere I can see." They lived slow after that. Mornings of soft baby giggles. Work-from-home meetings Raina took with Nia sleeping on her chest. Evenings with Raphael slow dancing with her in the living room to old-school R&B. No drama, no scandal. Just recovery. Just love. At her first speaking event for the Women's Center, Raina stood in front of a crowd of 30. She shared her story, not the billionaire part, not the scandal, but the moments she thought. She was crazy, the shame that nearly silenced her, and how healing wasn't a straight line. After, 3 women came up crying. They weren't strangers. They were survivors. She held them, listened, let their truth land. Later, she walked backstage where Raphael was holding Nia, both of them proud, both of them hers. One woman in the audience snapped a photo. The next day, it landed on a blog. Former wife of tech mogul Dorian Treston opens Women's Advocacy Center, chooses purpose over press. Raina saw it, smiled, then clicked away. She didn't need to relive her past to feel power. She was living proof that you could leave and build. Spring rolled in, not with fanfare, but with the soft return of color to the world. The first daffodil bloomed outside their apartment. Nia stood, wobbling on tiny feet, clapping as birds chirped from the windowsill. Raphael filmed her with one hand and flipped pancakes with the other. Raina leaned on the kitchen doorway, coffee in hand, still in her robe. Peace wasn't loud. It was this. No lawyers. No backtracking. No late-night texts from ghosts pretending to change. They had moved. Not far, but far enough. Their new space was theirs alone. No memories in the walls. No echoes of arguments or slammed doors. Just 3 toothbrushes in the bathroom, and Raphael's loud playlists while cooking. Raina sat on the patio that evening, wrapped in a throw blanket, laptop. On her lap, while Nia slept and Raphael read a book across from her. "I've been working on something," she said. He looked up. "Another list?" "A letter." She paused. "It's for me, or maybe for the version of me that stayed too long." She read it aloud, to the woman who thought silence was strength. "You survived, but survival is not the same as peace. You confused compliance for love. You called fear respect. You thought loyalty was owed, even when love was not given. You didn't speak because you thought you'd sound crazy. But the truth is, you were gaslit into doubting your gut. That was never your weakness. That was someone else's manipulation. You are not ruined. You are not hard to love. You are healing. And you're never going back. Not to silence. Not to fear. Not to survival. But forward. To living. Fully. Freely. Raphael was quiet when she finished. He walked over, kissed her forehead and whispered, "You should frame that." She laughed through a tight throat. "I think I will." A few weeks later, she received an invitation, a summit on women's empowerment. They wanted her to speak, to share her journey, to tell the truth. She hesitated. "I'm not a brand," she told Raphael. "You're a story, and stories save people." So she spoke. In a crisp ivory dress, heels low but steady, Raina stood before a crowd of hundreds. The screen behind her said, "Raina Chambers, founder, the Open Door Project." She started with her story, but ended with her message. You don't have to be hit to be hurt. You don't have to have scars to feel broken. And you don't have to stay where love does not lift you. You are not too late. You are not too far gone. You are not alone. If you feel something's off, trust that. Start there. And if your voice shakes, use it anyway. Afterward, as the applause rolled in, Raina stepped off stage and into Raphael's arms. He didn't say, "I'm proud of you." He showed her, in the way he held her. Steady, present, quietly proud. Back home that night, Raina stood beside the crib. Nia rolled over in her sleep, fingers curled in her blanket. Raphael turned down the lights in the hallway. "You okay?" he asked softly. She nodded. "I am now." Hey, family. If you've made it to the end of Raina's story, maybe part of it mirrors your own. Maybe you've loved someone who made you doubt your voice. Maybe you've stayed too long. Maybe you've mistaken survival for living. But today, let this story remind you, you are not broken. You are not weak because you loved deeply. You are strong because you left, or because you're thinking about leaving, or because you've decided to love yourself louder than anyone else ever did. So, I want to hear from you. Drop a heart in the comments if you believe peace is louder than revenge, or share your story, because your voice could be the key to someone else's freedom. Hit like, tap subscribe, and tell someone today you deserve better. You always have. Thank you for watching Mr. Charles Stories. We don't just tell stories. We tell truth through pain, through healing, and through love.